Good day, Silly Talkers. Welcome to a new episode of Silly Talks Music. My name is Saba, and I'm the founder of the Silly McWiggles project, and your host for this show. Did you catch the 2 September episodes with Bella Amor and Venice Quinn, two amazing female artists from the Sony Music Australia roster? Today I'm speaking with two fabulous women as well. But Trish, who is a social worker, and Claire, who works as a counsellor, do something slightly different in the Australian music community. Along with 4 other founders, Cindy and Chanel, also social workers, and Erica and Kirsty, who are both musicians and teachers, they run Feminista Vinyl. It is a record shop celebrating female-led, trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming inclusive bands and artists from all cultures. But that's not all. Unlike many other record shops I know, they are a not-for-profit, with the aim of creating safety and community in their home of Coburg, one of the quirky, artsy suburbs of Melbourne, and one that I have very fond memories of. Funnily, I came across Feminista Vinyl through someone I connected with on Instagram. I found gaps through one of my posts, and I wanted to speak to her about an intersectional initiative she's a part of. Unfortunately, that project is now on hold. But we girls stick together, so she redirected me to a similar program called Typical Girls, which gives women and gender-diverse people over 40 the opportunity to form punk bands, write songs, rehearse and put on a live show with no previous experience required. Well, it turns out that Typical Girls use Feminista Vinyl premises. So one thing led to another, and that's how I set up a chat with Trish and Claire. But this is not just a conversation about 6 people running a record shop. It's also about promoting local musicians, elevating women and gender non-conforming people in the business, building a community, being cool and doing something meaningful after turning 40, and setting up a business from scratch. So buckle up, because we've got a few topics to cover in the 35 minutes ahead. Before I leave you with this chat, just a heads up as well. This conversation is not reserved for women and gender non-conforming folk only. There are so many allies in that space. So yes, we do criticize the music industry for being heavily male-dominated because it's a fact. But our intention wasn't to men-hate. It was rather to provide some context for why the 6 founders set up the shop in the first place. So if you're a guy listening to this episode, thank you for being here. Please approach it with an open mind. There might be some things you'll take away from this chat as well. And now, enough of this introduction. Let's hear the Feminista Vinyl story from Trish and Claire themselves. What brings me to your project and your shop as well is the fact that I'm a woman over 40 myself. I think we're going to talk about this too, so there is a certain stigma as well behind, that you're only cool until a certain age in music.
Way to tap into the vibe of Feminista Vinyl.
Exactly.
So, you just did the target, you just hit right in the middle. We were joking on our WhatsApp group. Someone said something about, represent the perimenopausal women. Absolutely. That's us.
Yeah. So why don't we start where everyone does? So if you could just introduce yourselves and say who you are and what your connection to music is, that would be great.
Yeah. So my name's Trish Hayes, and Claire and I have been at the start of Feminista Vinyl over 5 years now. And connection to music, that's a really great question. Well, 5 of us worked in the same place, which was in healthcare, in abortion services, and we were feminists. So a lot of that was really full-on heavy work. But I think the thing that also joined us all was that we really liked music, and I guess sort of often particular types of, want of a better word, indie music. And we're of a certain age where we kind of came to adolescence in the early 90s. So there was a lot of, riot girl music. And I guess as a common thing, we all carried that with us as a fabulous part of our other lives as being social workers or counsellors, that we also, and activists, music was, I guess, in some ways a part of it, in some ways not. But it really bonded us, I guess. I mean, I just remember that 90s kind of right girl stuff was so formative for me. I was at uni and discovering feminism and the music like Veruca Salt and Hole. And I remember I even did my uni thesis proposal on women in rock. And I remember this like years later. I cannot believe it. I know. I don't know if I've told you that before, Claire, but like then 30 years later, we formed Feminista. So that's enough for me. I'll let Claire.
Okay, cool. My name's Claire O'Rourke and I work as a counsellor, and I'm one part of the group of 5 that we all work together in this women's hospital abortion service. And prior to that, we'd all volunteered kind of separately at a women's phone referral service that's still going today, decades later, and is now women and gender non-conforming, non-binary phone referral service. So my connection to music is pretty similar to Trish. So just living in Melbourne in the 90s when I was 20 and upwards, and just going to local pub gigs all the time. And you would know, Saba, from, your time in Melbourne, that there's every night of the week there are gigs in every pub just about. So you can go see a lot of free stuff, or, you can pay, well, this is back then, a measly cover charge and see bands that now, might be pretty big, but, got to see them when they were just, sorry about the dog, just gigging. And at the time, if I think back about it, there weren't a lot of women artists that I saw at, local pubs. It was very blokey or male-oriented bands that were getting those opportunities. But I have been in singing groups and choirs over my life on and off, and so has Trish and other members of Feminista Vinyl. And not that we've joined, we've created a choir, Feminista Vinyl choir, but we always refer to it as though it really does exist, like an FV choir should sing that or do that, or we should perform. So it kind of lives in our imaginations, and it might happen one day. Okay. But there is more to the story about the formation of Feminista Vinyl that is about the music scene or the record shop scene even.
And it's funny that you would say that when you were growing up, like the scene was very much blokey, because when I was growing up, like when I think about it now, my favorite bands were all male as well. Like my all-time favorite is like Pearl Jam, 5 blokes. And then like when it comes to Australia, because I was raised up on the grunge era as well, like in the 90s and stuff. So I would have probably listened to Silverchair, 3 blokes again.
Just wanted to add to that what you said, Saba, is that I also feel like I grew up with so much male lens-dominated music, and it was just I thought I liked what I liked. And it wasn't until I sort of started being a bit more political, I guess, that I kind of went, I better look at this aspect of it, and sort of consciously tried to like open myself up to non-male artists.
I think that's what we see though, don't we? Like that's what the market flooded us with is, if you look at festival lineups, etc.
Yeah.
Still is so heavily dominated by male-led bands that I guess we can only choose from what is available. And that was such a big thing and too, changing a lot now. It is changing now.
I was recently looking at my kind of, the content I've published over the years, because I started the blog in 2019. And I don't want to also sound like tokenistic or anything, but there's a lot of content that I've created because I go by great music and what I like first. I get a lot of pitches from guys, and I'm like, where are all the women in Australia? So it's great that you would mention that as well, because that's what I want to change very much on my blog, just feature more female identifying artists in general. Okay, but let's talk about the shop then. But first things first, when did you guys establish it?
We had the idea in late 2019, and then by the time we were ready to open, it was 2020.
Oh, the famous
year to end all year.
Yeah. And so what prompted you to do that?
So a friend of ours owns a record store in Abbotsford called Dutch Vinyl, and it's, you might know Dutch Vinyl, but a really successful record store. And one night we went out for my birthday and we had drinks at Dutch Vinyl afterwards. And it was like after the shop had closed, and there was like, I don't know, probably 20 of us maybe just enjoying this great atmosphere. And we were like, man, this is such a cool idea. Why don't we own a record store? Like, why don't we open a record store? We've just kind of had a few drinks and we're laughing and mucking around. And then there was like, we love vinyl, but then we started sort of going, but I always find record stores intimidating to go into because sometimes it feels like people are really experts and they're men and they're like, what edition of the blah, blah, blah do you want? And did you catch the live version of
the Japanese pressing?
Exactly. And we just started laughing about it and going, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was a record store where you didn't get to feel like that? And then we were like, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if there was a record store that promoted women? Because Eri and Kirsty, who are two of Feminista Vinyl, are musicians themselves and amazing musicians. We had, I guess, also watched them struggle over the years to make a living and do the things that they're so good at musically, but there was just no forum for them to do that. And Eri and I have been in a choir together with, she'd formed her own choir, and then we've been in a choir with an amazing Melbourne musician called Kate Alexander. Anyway, also we were all kind of edging towards late 40s and a bit of a midlife crisis burn going on, and the desire to kind of maybe change up our lives a little bit and do something amazing. And so after the drinks that night, I rang Kirsty, I think the next day, and said, I know we were drunk, but why don't we do this? She said, yep. And then we conscripted the 6 of us in and, you can go from there.
I wasn't there for that conversation, so I trust everything you've said or made up. It sounds good.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wasn't Feminista Vinyl sort of just a jokey name that in that conversation about record shop, we should call it Feminista Vinyl? Just because that's all of our, backgrounds and brains. And
it's a total drunken made up idea and name, and it stuck.
And then we, naturally had to create a WhatsApp group because that's the next step for getting anything done.
Yes, exactly.
We had to kind of firstly laugh about the preposterous nature of the idea in a way because, none of us have any expertise with vinyl or running a shop or a business. So it was a really nice level playing field. But what we did have in common is that we knew each other really well and how each other works and operates. And we knew that we were really of sort of one mind in terms of our personalities. And that came from having this work history together that was very bonding and sort of formative. So we had to, invent the wheel for ourselves because we didn't know what we were doing or how to do it. But there was so much sort of solidarity and goodwill and just safety around being able to create it together and know that we could do it. And, that it would be a positive experience. And I think one of the first decisions we made was about the business structure. And we also really liked the idea of Feminista Vinyl being not only a female-led and gender non-binary, non-conforming artist retail space to promote those artists and their releases or their art. We also love the idea, partly maybe from our own work backgrounds of it being, a place where people could come and feel really comfortable and safe and access community information about various support services or groups that were inclusive or, support based. And so for that reason, I think we decided to set it up as a not-for-profit business structure. And there was a bit of documentation and registration and red tape, et cetera, involved in the early stages as well.
I was really naive about that. I just thought you rented a shop and brought a cash register or something. It was just this ridiculous dream. And then it was a bit hard to keep alive at some stages because there was a lot of the boring red tape stuff. And we'd sometimes be like, why did we do this again? Why are we doing this? But the support was so strong that we kind of thought, we're onto something here. And when we talked about it with other people would be like, people in the music industry, I remember, would be saying, oh, my God, why didn't I think of this before? I remember someone said that to Kirsty.
There was a groundswell of community support, and that was really nice because we had to figure everything out as we went along.
Mm-hmm. You guys are located in Coburg, yeah? So it's past Brunswick, yeah. What I wanted to know is whether the foundation of the store in Coburg, was it because you found premises there, or was it because of the Coburg community that you knew very well and you knew you could do something with and about?
A bit of both. So I lived in Coburg for 10 years, so I knew it really well. 3 of the members lived in Reservoir or Preston, which are suburbs surrounding, and I lived in Pascoe Vale, which surrounds Coburg. We had all grown up and lived in those areas, so we knew the community was a socially progressive community with keen eye for music, arts, all sorts of creative endeavours. So we just instantly knew it had to be either really Preston or Coburg.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at a few locations and ended up in Coburg, but the other part we needed was that behind the record store, we needed a building that had two businesses.
Okay.
One is the counselling business that three of us are in that subsidises some of the rent of the record store business. So we knew we needed a shop front. But absolutely, yeah, the Coburg thing was just a good fit. We just knew that in a way symbolised, I guess, the people we wanted to connect with. So sort of ethnically diverse, but also in terms of LGBTIQ community, the council's been really supportive of kind of endeavours in that space. So it ticked lots of boxes. And the other part of it was that Kirsty, who is one of the six of us, had been a mentor in a group called Girls Rock.
Oh, yes, I know them too. Yeah. Great initiative. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Being one of the mentors, and she's like, part of our mandate will be promoting local bands and, women and girls and gender non-binary in the local music scene.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew, of course, that a lot of artists lived around Brunswick, Coburg, Preston, Reservoir, because they're not so much Brunswick, but they had been the affordable areas for artists to live in.
Yeah, but also, obviously vinyl is coming back. And I guess, people are starting to go back to all that vintage stuff, let's say, because in the digital age, obviously it's very difficult to maintain the shops. I was like, what? And, kind of like risky endeavor in a sense, to like open a thing like that.
Sure.
And so when you opened, was it just before the pandemic or was it in the pandemic already?
We had a opening launch date of April 2020, and we had to defer it, I think, twice because you probably know that Melbourne's lockdowns were amongst the absolute harshest or strictest in the world. And so we just had lockdown after lockdown. So we ended up being able to open in December 2020 and open with restricted numbers. We then quickly realised that we had to have an online presence. We had to have an online existence so that we could stay open and sell, the stock that we had.
And so in some ways it was a great catalyst because God bless Cindy, who's one of our six of us. She said, all right, I'm going to try and make up a website. And she did. And she got all our stock online. And then it became this great thing during the lockdowns that we were able to sell online, and I think you got an exemption. You're allowed to leave the house if you're a business delivering things.
Oh, okay.
5Ks,
People loved buying vinyl in lockdowns because it was like this little reward present. So I remember, dropping things off to people, and it was like the only human contact, you would have had in a couple of days. Like one of our wonderful community in Coburg, a bottle shop, offered to be like a pickup point for vinyl.
Yeah, wow.
So it created this great community within the businesses in Coburg as well.
And we also had major donations of postal vinyl packaging. We probably still have more than we'll ever use in our, lifetime to come, but paying for a supply of vinyl packaging so that they could be sent was also going to be an expense. But we called on everyone we know who's been ordering vinyl in lockdown or might be hoarding some, and we ended up with all sorts of packaging so that it keeps it flat, keeps it padded and still and protected, and that was really great too.
I wanted to go into a bit more like what you started saying, Claire, about how you finance it. So I saw that you collect donations, for instance, but how do you maintain the whole thing? Because I can imagine that you need to pay for the premises, like you said, and, there are some things that you probably also kind of have to finance from your own pocket.
That happened definitely at the start. To set up.
Because a record shop, normally you would think, commercial, a regular kind of business model, and you guys are a non-profit. So how is it all structured?
The smell of an oily rag, Saba, honestly, that it runs on the smell of an oily rag. We were able to set up because of the fundraising we did at the start and sort of business of the counselling rooms and other practitioners who would hire those rooms as well. So that was a plan for keeping things open, and it still works. You would remember probably from your time in Melbourne on Brunswick Street in Fitzroy, there was a really long-term iconic record shop called Polyester Records.
Yes.
Yeah, so Polyester Records, ran for decades, and then with Rents in Brunswick Street, that's closing down, and we bought their vinyl racks. And my brother, who's got a van, put them in the back of the van and brought them up. And then we had, painting day where we painted and kitted out the shop and made it look sort of nice and light and spacious. And that reminds me actually of another artist that did an in-store with Feminista Vinyl, Jasper they're also, excellent with carpentry, and they built wooden shells.
Wow.
That was excellent. We also realised too that in terms of the human resources, all of us work in jobs during the week. And we also, because it's a not-for-profit and, the funds were always a bit low, we couldn't pay staff to run it, 7 days a week. We're within the not-for-profit structure, we are permitted to earn a wage from it if we were able to. So there's nothing to stop us from doing that, but we can't profit financially like shareholders would, if it was a different business structure. So, we couldn't staff it during the week because we're all doing our own jobs. So, for that sort of practical reason, we have always opened it basically just as a weekend thing, the shop front.
Yeah.
So Saturday and Sunday open, and the back rooms, the counselling rooms, which is known as Yellow Door Counselling, and that operates during the week, and it's got a separate entrance.
We're all run by volunteers, and even though that's kind of it is a financial decision because we can't pay anyone. We don't get paid, but it's really come from, I think, also with that DIY ethos that was kind of that punk riot girl thing.
Yes.
We had all grown up in the 90s and been at uni or been in bands with Ari and Kirsty where you just did DIY. For us, it was activism. You would always...
Also a lot of volunteering. We'd all done volunteer stuff.
Yes, so we probably had that model in our head that you actually can run services that are volunteer-based, and you just run every project on the run of Smell of an Oily Rag. And, the worst thing that can happen is that we have to close, and then 5 years later we...
Grand sale.
Paying the bills. Yeah, somehow.
Yeah. The stock that you have, how do you source it? Is it all pre-loved or is it all new?
The vinyl is a mixture of new releases and secondhand. So, like most vinyl shops has a mixture. So for that specifically, we've got 2 or 3 or 4 different sort of accounts with distributors. Between the various sort of accounts that we have, we sort of cover a range of different artists. We can cast the net wide-ish, I guess, to get new releases. And then sometimes we, have bought secondhand vinyl from people who are, selling their collection, or people donate it, or we find it, ourselves. And then aside from that, the music, I think, is either some old cassettes and some new release cassettes, because people have
coming back
crazily, started releasing on cassette again. And then CDs as well. So some people are, releasing on CD new releases, not vinyl. We started doing our own merch. So we had tote bags, we sold those. We had, that's right, we had big undies and we sold all of those. Like, like side big undies.
Like the Bridget Jones kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, with our logo on them.
People love them just to kind of symbolise us. Like we are
the life stage.
45. We love big undies now, and I don't know. It seemed to really suit. We had them hanging in the front window.
That's a great idea. I would have loved your own one there as well.
Yeah. We should bring them back one day, shouldn't we? Like they were really popular. And then we were able to finance having our own T-shirts and getting them printed. So we've done a couple of runs of those. Recently, we did a run of our logo on hoodies, and we've been able to fund that being fair wear, like proper fair wear suppliers and manufacturers.
We also were clear that, that we wanted the shop to have a number of uses, and one of them would be we had the space to stock local artists. So we've got upcycled bags and cards, and we've had various artists stock.
And sometimes it is music releases too. There's been some on-consignment music releases where we pay them once we've sold, or we buy outright and then we add our own profit margin to that. So, sometimes that has included music releases.
Absolutely. That's been one of my favourite parts of the store, is watching people like Oceanique, which is a local artist, and
Georgia Field.
That we would support these sort of local musicians in their infancy, and then they would repay us in kind by remembering us and doing an in-store. Like Oceanique then did their second album launch with us because we'd formed these relationships early on of taking on their work as consignment or in some way supporting, promoting them. And then It's been so beautiful 5 years on them, watching them come back with second albums and then really giving it back to us and supporting us for whatever it is. Grants. Oh, we put on a music festival. That's right. A couple of musicians.
Yeah, so we got local council and they we were able to get a community grant from them. We put on outdoor garden festival at Coburg Lake, and I think we called it a tea party, didn't we? Because that was another part of our personalities of just being like tea drinking, tea town loving people. So
beer swilling festival blokey, we were like, we actually want a garden party vibe, like where it's during the day, you don't have to stay out too late.
I think that these parties, like for the people our age, so to put it this way, where you kind of like go in a bit earlier and then it finishes like 10 p.m. and you can be in bed like by midnight and it's great. And
that's right. Yeah. There's even something called like Home by 10 or Done by 10 or something I noticed around it here somewhere. I saw something, I think it's Australian or maybe even Melbourne, like an events, and that's the kind of the business name. And something else prior to this is related to the garden party. Kirsty was really spearheading this, but running fairly frequent, like monthly or thereabouts, open mic days on Sunday afternoons. So we'd get really great attendance from people who wanted to perform, their own stuff, mainly their own original songs, and in a really sort of obviously very friendly, supportive audience and venue. So we've done quite a few. We haven't done one for a while, but we've done quite a few open mics. And when we had one or two of those, and there was some performers there who absolutely blew us away. They were just incredible, so talented and mesmerising. And with the garden party, event that we got funding for, we invited a few of them to perform on that day. So we opened the event with maybe 3 or 4 artists that had been in open mics, including a band of kids who were like 13, 12, who were great. Mm-hmm. So there were maybe 4 of them. And then we had an amazing Melbourne artist called Merpire. I don't know if you've come across.
I was going to tell you, I saw on your website that you had their signed copy of her vinyl.
She did a Rolling Stone video.
Video, an interview about some of her favourite record shops and where they videoed her going into them and talking, and so she included us, which is lovely. And she's incredibly talented and lovely, so that was great. And it was raining by that stage, and she just soldiered on. And we also had Hannah Blackburn, who is another independent Melbourne artist who's really talented and has been a really nice artist friend of FE. Oh, we had Zigzag, or a sort of noisy rock band. They were great.
We were able to pay them with state government money. State government put in funds after lockdown to try and regenerate the music scene.
Okay.
Yeah. And we also found a women-run production company too. So it was actually produced, the event was produced, and all the sound was a women's business. That was major excitement, actually. That is significant disparity gender-wise in music. So that was really great. And apart from the funding that enabled, the artists and paying a fee, etc., everything else really came from a big pool of volunteers doing various things. So we had a few stalls on the day. We had, marquees set up that were just people had them and brought them on the day. My partner's a GP, and so he was the first aid tent on the day, and I think he had to put a Band-Aid on someone. That was the extent of it, which meant, that was pretty good, easy job. Someone volunteered to be stage manager and artist liaison, I think. So someone who wasn't one of us 6 handled that for us, and that was really great.
Because we'd never run a music festival. There's a lot of stuff you
I was petrified. I was petrified.
I can imagine. Yeah. But also a cheeky question, right? Your concept is that you want to promote and support female identifying artists and, like businesses and so on. But what happens, for instance, if there is a band which is female fronted, but they have guys? Are you strict to the point that you would not stock it, for instance, or that you would just make an exception because it's female fronted?
Yeah, well, female led, we always say female led. So that's inclusive of that structure, like that, band makeup.
Okay.
And we have, I mean, they're good questions. We've had to grapple with this a few times where we're like, oh, what do we all think about this? And then we just kind of work it out on a case-by-case basis. So if there's women or female identifying or non-binary, like they're marginalised kind of groups in terms of power, and we just work it out and go, we really just want to be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah. I think our open mics have been gender inclusive. So we've had male open mic guests.
And it's usually the allies are people who understand, and we haven't really had much pushback, which we kind of expected we might have. We actually have a lot of men as allies. Like, honestly, the amount of dads that bring their kids in and want their daughter to buy their first record at Feminista Vinyl, I love that. The overwhelming feeling is of people that support the idea and understand it.
Okay, so I can see that on your website that you've got like all these big artists, like Sabrina Carpenter and Amy Winehouse. All those are sold out. But as you said, Trish, you also stock like local artists. So would you say the ratio is more towards still like international, like big stars, or people are more interested in getting like very unique pieces or like looking for something new they might not know?
What a good question. Firstly, I think sometimes things sell out quickly because we're so low funds that we can't ever buy multiples of things. So the most really that we would have of a big artist is maybe 2.
Okay.
And then, like a more local artist or maybe consignment artist, we might have 3 or maybe a bit more. But we do sell out quickly because we just don't have the budget for having 10 copies of something ever.
But that also creates the FOMO effect. So, like people really want to be like behind the idea of getting.
Yeah, it happens to be true. I do feel like it's quite split. Some people are really interested in more obscure things or definitely less mainstream, more Australian or local.
But then having said that, they might do a bit of both. So people will be like into, independent local music. So they'll target our store to come into. They might pick up the one that they knew that they wanted to, like, I want to look for some local artists. Great, you've got them. But then they'll browse and they'll be like, someone's back catalogue that they haven't got, which it might be Amy Winehouse or even Madonna or something that we happen to have. And they're like, I'm going to get that because A, I haven't got it on vinyl and I want the back catalogue, and B, I prefer to give, a lot of people say this, prefer to give the money to you guys as an independent, give it to the big
JB, Hi-Fi or something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So let's talk about like your favorites, or like what is your most prized possession, so to speak? And are you sometimes tempted to like get it yourself instead of selling it to somebody?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that it all goes towards keeping the shop open.
Yeah. Kirsty tells me off for buying.
Oh, okay.
When the new stock comes in.
Yeah, sometimes, yes, you want to make it available. You want it to stay,
Like, we want our good stuff to stay there for at least a week so that people see that we've got really good stock.
Definitely.
And you stop buying it on the second it comes in.
Control ourselves, yeah. I probably do a shift about once every 3 weeks or thereabouts. It is really fun coming in and looking through the shelves, and you'll see things that have been there a while, but you'll see new things, and that just feels like I'm in any other record shop, but I sort of know that there'll be really interesting things in there that I'll either not know about or want to know about or be able to check out because they've appeared and I don't know that artist or whatever.
I really like the Feminista Vinyl t-shirt. And that's for a number of reasons that I just think we came up with such a great design. Within 30 minutes, one of us said, I think the design should look like this. And the rest of us just went, absolutely, that was the vibe that I was looking at for our logo. And I love Feminista Vinyl t-shirts, A, because you can buy them for Christmas presents for everybody and people love them. And then also you get the thrill of every now and then seeing someone wearing one out in the wild. So like a friend of mine was at the airport and saw someone at the airport wearing a FV t-shirt, and then someone was at a gig and they saw the person in the band wearing an FB t-shirt. So it's just such a thrill to see people supporting.
Amazing.
They're really t-shirts.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, the merch is particularly great for that.
So what I found on your website is something called Women's Guitar Group. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Because I think this is where Typical Girls, that project that I heard about, comes from as well, correct?
We can't claim a lot of responsibility for Typical Girls because it's someone, her name's Rachel, and I cannot remember how Rachel became involved in the shop through one of our connections, one of the 6 of us. Rachel started this women's guitar group, advertised in a lot of different ways. And I think it's like in her third or fourth year now of running that women's guitar group. She does it like Tuesday, Thursdays, lunchtime and evening. A wonderful idea. Women and non-binary folk. And then Rachel had an idea to apply for a Merribeck grant about 2 years ago because she wanted to run an over 40s punk group. So amazing idea, got funded. Kirsty, who's one of our FB mob and had done, as I said before, Girls Rock. So she came on board as one of the mentors. So they take a group of, I think, 10 maybe women and split them in, or maybe 12, split them into 4 groups. Women who've got varying levels of experience, like some have never held an instrument before, some have got some experience and get to write and perform a song with culminating in a concert at the end of that 8 weeks. So this really tight timeline. And second year. Next year will be the third year, and I think it's going to be bigger and better. I think they're going for more funds so they can perhaps have more weeks maybe for training.
Okay, so the connection is that they use your premises sometimes as well, correct? Yeah? Okay. At that festival that you mentioned, was it a one-off thing, or are you thinking of making it, next editions as well? Or is it dependent on funding?
All of the above, really. I don't think we talked about it specifically as something that we will do on an annual basis, mainly because it was a lot. And so that's, or finding suitable funding that we might be eligible for, applying for it, writing the grant, etc., working out how to make it possible and, who the artist might be and, what the budget is and how to staff it, everything that has to happen. So there was all of this council stuff that we had to work out as well, had to have various business plans and venue plans and safety plans, permits, all sorts of stuff. So, but different versions of events like that on a continuum in a broad sense, we sort of percolate over time and come up with things.
Like we just put in for another grant with another artist called Magnets, who's a Melbourne artist. So to do a residency of 4 weeks in April next year of women and gender diverse Sunday afternoon performances. Where we could pay the artists, because that's really been a really important part of us is that, like, we don't want to ask artists to do free stuff because they're already doing free stuff, but we just have to do it in a way that's, sustainable for both of us so that we have the means to keep going as a not-for-profit with none of us getting paid. And that's really only via funding or magical donation that hasn't quite arrived in the universe yet.
Okay.
Surely will.
Yeah. I've been thinking of my own mini festivals and I made it up. I published the fake lineup and like the fake poster like every year with artists that I love, and it's called City Fest. Of course it is. Yeah. So, I might need a venue, so you never know.
There's a car park that we could consider. Like we've always talked about, having an outside car park festival and, all the things that would go along with that. And also now there's a cafe 2 doors down, there's a bar. So there's other businesses that, we're friends with that it could involve too. So
one day.
Well, great speaking to you ladies.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, for sure.
To do it. That's been really fun.
Thank you very much, ladies, once again. Have a lovely evening. We'll be in touch.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for the conversation with Trish and Claire, my silly jokers. But I'm curious, have you just found your new favorite record store in Melbourne? I surely hope so, because I'm a fan too. So tell your friends and family about it, because word of mouth always works best in this case. I'm also all about supporting local emerging artists, so I encourage you to check out the ones Trish and Claire have mentioned in our chat. Naturally, they have put together a few playlists highlighting their favorite acts on streaming platforms too. Oh, and don't forget that 2 founders, Kirsty and Erica, are musos themselves. Also, the girls wanted me to share with you that there is a Feminista Vinyl fundraising dance party coming up on Saturday, October the 11th, at a venue in East Brunswick. From disco to punk, soul to funk, DJs will be spinning all vinyl gems to keep you moving all night long. And I love how they put it in the event. Quote, Feminista style means fierce beats, big energy, and a dance floor where everyone belongs. End quote. So if you're in the area that weekend, feel free to rep me at the event, because unfortunately I won't be able to make it. Last time I checked, tickets were still available, and I'll leave you all the relevant links to the shop's channels in the show notes. Many thanks to Trish and Claire for a fun chat, proving that perimenopausal women can do some cool stuff after all, hey? Your shop is definitely in the top 10 places I'll be paying a visit to when I return to Melbourne. And who knows, maybe Feminista Vinyl and Silly McWiggles will come up with a dope collaboration in the future? Also, cheers to you, Silly Talkers, for listening to this episode and supporting my other channels. As an independent creator, it means the world to me knowing that the content I publish resonates with you. If I can just ask you for a favor, then please give my @SillyMcWiggles social media channels and my sillymcwiggles.blog some love as well. And definitely stay tuned for more podcast conversations. Take care. Bye for now.